Welcome back, guys. This is part two of chapter five, where we're going to dive into the concept of the body as a magnet. Here, Dr. Joe breaks down how our emotional state literally shapes our electromagnetic field, aka our aura, and how when we live in survival mode, we draw more of what we are afraid of. We draw more of what we're afraid of. That actually reminds me of a law of attraction teaching by Abraham Hicks. What you resist persists. Yeah. But the beauty of this work is that once we understand the body's magnetic power, we can start to create new experiences, not from fear, but from elevated emotion. So let's get started with the body as a magnet. Think about a magnet as you look at figure 5.3. Magnets, of course, have polarity. They each have a north pole and a south pole. One end has a positive charge and the other end has a negative charge. The polarity between the ends of a magnet is what causes the magnet to produce an electromagnetic field. The stronger the polarity between the two poles, the larger the electromagnetic field the magnet produces. You can see the electromagnetic field. You can't see the electromagnetic field, but it exists and it can be measured. They measuring it, y'all. I didn't show you the graphs in the last video because my lighting changes, but the strength of a magnet's electromagnetic field can even influence matter. If you were to take a tiny metal shavings and lay them on a piece of paper, put another piece of paper over the first piece of paper, and then set a magnet on top of the second piece of paper, those metal shavings would organize themselves within the magnet's electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field of the magnet is powerful enough to affect material reality, even though the frequency of this field exists beyond your senses. In other words, you can't see what's causing the little magnet pieces to move, but you see them moving and you know that there's a force that's creating that. So, figure 5.4 illustrates this, and you guys have seen magnets in action before. The Earth is a magnet, and like any other magnet, it has a north pole and a south pole, as well as an electromagnetic field surrounding it. While this field itself is invisible, we're all familiar with one amazing way to see that it exists. The Earth's electromagnetic field deflects the sun's photons, and during a solar flare or mass coronal ejection, the sun's photons, I'm sorry, let me read that again. While the field itself is invisible, we're all familiar with one amazing way to see that it exists. The Earth's electromagnetic field deflects the sun's photons, and during a solar flare or mass coronal ejection, that field deflects trillions of tons of photons hurled towards the Earth in a pulsating, colorful phenomenon known as the Northern Lights. I didn't know that. I just saw a picture of the Northern Lights recently. So that's what's happening. It's like a magnetic thing happening with the solar flares from the sun. Did not know that. Anyways, your body is also a magnet. Ancient cultures, especially Asian cultures, have known this for thousands of years. Once again, Joe giving credit where it's due. The natives, the spiritualists that have existed long before this science. Your north pole is your mind and your brain, and your south pole is your body at the base of your spine. When you're living by the hormones of stress, the emotions of survival, or when you're overutilizing the other two survival energy centers, you are constantly drawing energy from this invisible field. The energy then no longer flows through the body because the body because the body in survival mode is pulling the energy from the field and storing it in the body, specifically in the first three energy centers. This is what happens when the thinking feeling loop we talked about earlier is activated. If this goes on long enough, the body won't have any electrical charge running through it at all. And without an electrical charge, it can't create the field of electromagnetic energy that normally surrounds it. When that happens, the body is no longer like a magnet. Now it's like a piece of ordinary metal, a magnet that's lost its charge. And as you can see in picture 5.5, the body then becomes more matter and less energy, or more particle and less wave. I'll show you that real quick. This is a magnetized body. This is a not magnetized body. Of course, if there were a way to get this energy that's stored in the first three centers moving again, the current would resume flowing and the body would recreate the electromagnetic field. The breath does just that. It gives us a way to pull the mind out of the body and to move all of that stored energy from the first three centers up the spine to the brain, restoring the electromagnetic field surrounding the body. Once that happens, we can use that energy for things other than survival. Let's take a look at the way our physical bodies are constructed so we can understand what makes that possible. So here he's showing a graph of, see, I'm doing it again. I don't know how helpful that is to show you that, but take a look at figure 5.6. You have a bone at the base of your spine called your sacrum that looks like an upside down triangle with a plateau on the top. Okay, that's the sacrum. It looks like an upside down triangle. I can see that now. I didn't know what he was talking about in meditation. I was talking about sacrum. On top of that flat surface sits a spinal column, which extends all the way up to your skull. Inside the closed system is the central nervous system, which is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. The spinal cord is actually an extension of your brain. The skull and the spinal column protect this most delicate system. The central nervous system is one of your body's most important systems because it controls and coordinates all the other systems in the body. Without the aid of the central nervous system, you couldn't digest your food, you couldn't void your bladder, and you couldn't move your body, and your heart couldn't beat. You couldn't even blink your eyes without the nervous system. So you can think of the nervous system as the electrical wiring that runs the machine of your body. Inside the closed system is the cerebral spinal fluid that's filtered from the blood to the brain. That's filtered from the blood in the brain. This fluid bathes the brain and the spinal cord, and it's responsible for giving the central nervous system its buoyancy. It acts as a cushion to protect the brain and the spinal cord from trauma, and it flows in various rivers and paths that transport nutrients and chemicals to different parts of the nervous system all over the body. But its very nature, by its very nature, this fluid acts as a conduit to enhance electrical charges in the nervous system. Now let's go back to your sacrum. Every time you inhale, that sacrum bone flexes back slightly, and every time you exhale, it flexes forward just a little bit. This is an extremely subtle movement, too subtle for you to notice, even if you try. But it happens. And at the same time you inhale, the sutures of your skull, the joints between the individual plates of your skull, which fit together like pieces of a puzzle and give your skull a degree of flexibility, open up just slightly. As you exhale, they close back up. Again, this is extremely subtle. You can't feel it happening. The movement of your sacrum back and forth as you slowly breathe in and out, along with the sutures of the skull opening and closing, propagates a wave within the fluid that of this closed system, and it slowly pumps that cerebral spinal fluid up your spine all the way to the brain, passing through four chambers called the cerebral aqueducts or ventricles. If you were to tag one molecule of cerebral spinal fluid and follow it from the base of your spine all the way up to your brain and then all the way back down to your sacrum, you see that it would take 12 hours to make a complete circuit. So, in essence, when you flush your brain, so in essence, you flush your brain twice a day. Check out figure 5.7 to see what that looks like. I'll show you that here. Screenshot. So think about what would happen if you contracted an intrinsic muscle of your perineum, your pelvic floor, the same muscles you use for intercourse and elimination, and you locked them down. And then while they were locked down, you next contracted the muscles of your lower abdomen, locking those muscles down. And then you did the same with the muscles of your upper abdomen. If you kept squeezing and contracting those muscles in your first three energy centers by contracting your core muscles, that fluid in your central nervous system would move up, as illustrated in figure 5.8. You'd be moving that cerebral spinal fluid in your central nervous system up your spine. Each time you tighten the muscles of those centers, the fluid would be forced upward. Now imagine you then placed your attention on top of your head. Where you place your attention is where you place your what? Your energy. So if you put your attention at the top of your head, that will become your target for moving the energy. Now think about taking one slow, steady breath through your nose and at the same time squeezing and holding the muscles of your perineum, then those lower abdomen, then those of your upper abdomen, all while following your breath up the spine, through your chest, through your throat, and your brain, and all the way up to the top of your head. Imagine that when you get to the top of your head, you hold your breath, and as you keep squeezing, you'd be pulling that cerebral spinal fluid all the way upward to your brain. Just knock my light. Oh, this is the chart, by the way, what he's talking about. The fluid that's flowing up. As you contract those muscles in the first three centers, hold them up, focus your attention and awareness, and move that energy up to your brain. That's significant because cerebral spinal fluid is made up of proteins and salts in solution. And the moment proteins and salts dissolve in solution, they become charged. I know that. If you take a charged molecule and accelerate it, as you would if you pulled that molecule up your spine, you create an inductance field. An inductance field is an invisible field of electromagnetic energy that moves in a circular motion in the direction the charged molecules are moving in. The more charged molecules you accelerate, the bigger and more powerful the inductance field. Take a look at figure 5.9 to see what an inductance field looks like. So this is essentially what you're creating on this page. Oh, hold on. On this page, you're essentially creating an inductance field when you move that spinal fluid up by clamping down your energy centers in center 1, 2, 3 and move it up the spine. It's like a almost like a snake going up a pole. Yeah. Think of the spinal cord as a fiber optic cable that acts as a two-way highway, simultaneously communicating information from the body to the brain and from the brain to the body. Every second, important information is relayed from the brain to your body, such as the desire to walk across the room or to scratch an itch. At the same instant, a lot of information from the body is carried up the spinal cord toward the brain, such as the knowledge of where your body is in space or the signal that you are hungry. Once you accelerate these charged molecules in the direction up the spine, the resulting inductance field will reverse the current of information flowing from the brain down through the body. And this is the second chart, by the way, showing that inductance field and what happens. Please screenshot. He said, and it will then draw energy from the lower three centers up the spine to the brain. We take a look at figure 5.10a, which I just showed you, to see how that works. Now there's a current running through the body and the central nervous system, just like a magnet. And as a result, the same kind of electromagnetic field of energy that surrounds a magnet surrounds the body, as you can see in figure 510b. In the field of electromagnetic energy you've created, I'm sorry, the field of electromagnetic energy you've created is a three-dimensional field and it moves. And as it moves, the energy creates a torsion field or a torus field. By the way, the shape of this electromagnetic field is familiar pattern in the universe. This pattern shows up in the shape of an apple as well as the shape of a black hole in a distant galaxy. We'll see figure 5.11. This is what it looks like. So think of an apple and how that energy is circulating on both sides. So now you understand that by doing this breath technique, you're starting to stir up all the stored energy in a very big way. And if you do this technique correctly and you do it enough times, you are going to wake up a sleeping dragon. In other words, you're going to wake up that energy that's been stored and stuck. And this is what a lot of people refer to in the Eastern world as the Kundalini energy, because whatever's stuck there, you're getting it unstuck, and you you will start to notice the difference. You will notice when that energy becomes unstuck because you'll feel it started, like, so certain centers will start to be more charged up, and I'll talk about this in my live later. But you'll definitely notice when you're getting that energy unstuck. So your body is always broadcasting something. Okay. The question is, are you sending out signals of your past or the future you want to live in? And if you haven't encountered this work before, I'm going to bank that you're sending out signals of your past. In part three, we're going to learn how to evolve this energy all the way to the brain so we can begin living from inspiration instead of survival. So I'll see you in the next video.